You know, most people making a move to Minnesota think finding the right house is the hard part, or maybe it's winter. In reality, Minnesota works incredibly well for some people and not at all for others. This video is about helping you figure out which one you are. Okay, so before we get rolling with this video, I'm going to take just a minute, not even a minute here, and I'm going to tell you what you're signing up for and maybe what you're not signing up for. So number one, this is not a video to convince you to move to Minnesota. Frankly, it might do exactly the opposite. That's what this video is about. Is Minnesota a fit for you? Three patterns, three things, three archetypes I have kind of seen time and time again, so I'm going to share those with you here. And the first group are those groups of people that I would call my super spontaneous friends. Those of you who rely heavily on spontaneity, stepping outside, making last minute plans, getting wild and letting the day unfold. Minnesota can definitely be hard for that, and it's not because of rules and laws, it's just the reality forces more planning, especially during that big old season called winter. And just one little example here, I have a good friend from the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area of Florida. I spent a lot of time down there, and I'm sure a lot of you have as well. And what you notice is it doesn't matter if it's January 15th or June 15th, it doesn't matter if it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. You hit the streets and along the beach in Miami, full of life year round. It doesn't matter what time it is. Those restaurants are in a warm weather environment. They're set up for year round outdoor dining. They are set up for all of that stuff all of the time. That's not the case in Minnesota. Our restaurants are not set up for outdoor dining year round because half the year you can't do that, and things like that affect your daily plans. Just something to consider. So before I keep rambling, we're going to move on to my next group. My next group, and this is, I would say, right up there, and these are people who expect things to feel familiar very quickly. When I say familiar, I'm talking socially, culturally, or emotionally. I guess Minnesota's kind of from a different generation, or a funny old man. Minnesota, we move slow with our relationships. We like to make sure we're comfortable. Community here in Minnesota is fantastic. Second to none. When you move into your house, don't be surprised if your neighbors straight up knock on your door, say hello, and bring you a loaf of bread. That has happened to me almost every time I've moved to Minnesota. So the sense of community, the neighborhood, that stuff you want is all very real. Just understand it's going to take a little bit longer to develop than you're probably used to. People who are expecting very fast connections often feel like something is wrong. Nothing is wrong, it's just a different rhythm. So that's number two. Last and third I see is people who are expecting the environment to adapt to them instead of them adapting to the environment. So in Minnesota, like it or not, the environment here kind of sets the tone. Winter, we've got seasons, schedules, dictates a lot how life flows. People who can adjust to that tend to do very, very well. People who fight that are often really frustrated. I'm going to use myself as an example here just for a minute. I am almost 46 years old, and I am not a huge fan of winter, so some of you out there are probably saying, well, why do you live in Minnesota? That's a fair question. But here's what I've learned as someone who's been living here. When it gets to be winter, I have two choices. I can hide from it, say it sucks, it's cold, blah, 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 and I've done that for a lot of my life. Hide from it, it's miserable. As I've gotten older, I've gotten slightly smarter, and what I've learned is I can accept my reality and I can start planning for it. So yeah, it's going to be winter, it's going to be cold. I can sit in my house and hate my life, or I can make the best of it. I can get into some of these activities, I can get into some of these winter sports, I can embrace it, and if you do that, things are a hell of a lot better and your life is much more fun. So those are three groups I have seen time and time again struggle when they move to Minnesota. You know, I get so excited to tell you if Minnesota fits you or not. I forget my manners. My name is Chris, by the way. Contact information is all right here. It's also down below. This is what I help people do, my friends, make a move to Minnesota. If you've got questions, comments, sarcasm, or you're thinking about making a move at all, drop me a line. Love to chat. Let's get back to our video. All right, moving right along, we're going to call this the next section of our video, and we're going to cleverly call this the social reality here in Minnesota, not to be confused with the crappy movie about Facebook, The Social Network. This is definitely one of the biggest areas where I find a mismatch between what people were expecting and what actually shows up, and that's kind of in the social sphere. So I will get asked a lot of the time, is it hard to make friends in the great state of Minnesota? And the answer is, yeah, it can be, depending on what you're used to or where you're coming from. And not because Minnesotans are unfriendly. I will tell you, Minnesotans are genuinely some of the most polite, most helpful, most reliable people you will meet. But social life just works differently here than it does in a lot of places. Hang with me just for 1 second. Here's my theory. Places like Florida, right? Florida pulls retirees from all over the nation. And a lot of people just move to Florida. So Florida becomes this melting pot. You get a lot of transplants in Florida, people who have not lived there the whole life. So the point is, you get a lot of people in places like Florida, maybe in places like Arizona, who are new and looking to make friends. They're not running around with the same social circle they were since high school, like they might be exactly in Minnesota. So that's what I'm trying to get across. Take home hint here is not that Minnesotan people are closed off. It means that relationships takes time. And this is where Minnesota nice specifically gets misunderstood. Polite does not always mean super open. Friendly does not mean immediate friendship the day you moved into your house. People will absolutely help you shovel your driveway way before they invite you over for dinner. It's just the culture. It's nothing personal. Don't get offended, right? Community in Minnesota, my friends, is built through consistency. It's showing up, being around, seeing the same people time and time again. And really good places for this are school activities, kids events, neighborhood outings, neighborhood routines, things like that. These are great places to find, and I implore you, go make those connections. Make those connections. So the people that do the best in these communities, they understand you have to step into community. You have to make a little bit of an effort to get into that community. And once you do, my friends, the sense of community, the camaraderie feeling, the neighborhood vibes is second to none. Minnesota will blow you away. You just got to understand, don't take it personal. It's going to take a minute for that to develop. Well, up until this point, we have talked about people, expectations, and how community life works. So this next part here is going to be a little bit different. This is not about personality or preference. It is more about structure. And I'm talking about winter, because winter here in Minnesota doesn't just change the weather. What you have to understand in order to fit, in order to make Minnesota work for you, is that winter actually reorganizes how daily life works. Understanding that, accepting that, is key to having success in Minnesota. So what do I mean? For several months every year, I'm gonna say 5, winter sets the rhythm. Daylight affects when people are out, cold affects how long you stay out, snow affects how people move around, right? These change things like your errands, it changes your social plan, it changes how weekends feel, and of course, life does not stop. However, the key is life has to become more deliberate. As we talked about with winter, planning definitely replaces some of that spontaneity. Routine is probably going to replace some of that flexibility. You don't just decide to go do something. You might factor in the time, the light, conditions, and effort, where you might not have to do that in some other places. So none of this is good or bad. It's just how Minnesota operates. And this is also why winter feels heavier than most people are expecting. And it's not because it's cold, because it just reshapes how time and energy, frankly, are gonna get used. All right, well, we are gonna leave Minnesota winters here in the rearview mirror and move on to our next kind of section. And that's gonna be pace of life and or why Minnesota feels different. And I will tell you how and why winter sets the structure here. The rest of Minnesota pace of life kind of starts to make sense. And what the reality is, that structure doesn't really disappear when winter ends. It carries over, and it really carries over on how people plan and move their daily life throughout the year. Minnesota tends to run on routine. Not good or bad. You watching this video, you decide if that fits for you. But things like schools, calendars, kids activities, hockey, work schedules, commitments, these things shape the week. Social plans on weekends, I can tell you, are not always, but they are usually made in advance. And this is not accidental. It is a response to living in a place where times, seasons, conditions, frankly, planning matter. These things become part of the natural routine because they're part of the environment. So for you guys used to, a lot of spontaneity, definitely, this can feel slower and it can feel more rigid. For others, it can feel calmer, more intentional, more planful, more predictable. And again, not a hype video, neither is right or wrong. It's a different rhythm, and you know yourself. It depends how you feel about that. So when people say Minnesota feels different, it's usually not about excitement. It usually has to do with the pace. Life is more structured, more scheduled, more routine driven. For the people that fits, if that's you, it tends to go over perfectly. Why location maybe hits a little bit differently in Minnesota, and who this is going to work for and who it's not. And once you begin to understand, some of the things we've talked about, the pace of life, how winter operates, the role of the suburbs start to make more sense. Here's what I mean. In a lot of cities, where you live affects mostly what you're near. In Minnesota, it affects how easy your daily life is, right? So weather, routine, and long seasons reduce spontaneity here, so proximity matters more. Remember that, proximity matters here in Minnesota. Shorter drives, closer schools, nearby activities, these things compound over time to make your life either easier or harder. Living near a lake, for example, everyone, Minnesota lake life. Living near a lake doesn't automatically mean lake life, but living close enough to use it consistently does, right? The same is true for community. Great neighborhoods do not create instant or great connection, but some make participation much easier. So who does this work for? This setup, Minnesota, is going to work better for people who want daily life to feel efficient, supported, and predictable. Those of you looking for a very improvised, super spontaneous way of life, Minnesota's great. I can't tell you it's going to be a great fit right along that dimension. And that is exactly why two people can live in very equally nice suburbs, but have two very different experiences. So suburb choice here in Minnesota is not about hyper status. It doesn't get you a certain lifestyle. Rather, it's about how well a place supports the way you want to live. We have a vast video library on lots of the West Metro suburbs. If this is something you're thinking about, be sure to dig into that library and check them out, because we get real down and dirty, lots of details, and really get into some of these suburbs. One of the really interesting things as we start wrapping this video up, and definitely pertinent to this topic and may help you make some decisions for yourself, is who is most surprised, both good and bad, after a move to Minnesota. And I've seen patterns here as well. So the people who tend to be, in my experience, the people who tend to be most oftenly pleasantly surprised tend to be families coming from very busy, very high cost, high stress places. They're usually coming from lives where very fast, demanded, crowded areas, and what I think really surprises them and makes them fall in love with Minnesota is how manageable life feels once they settle into, here's the key word, once they settle into that Minnesota rhythm. They did not move here for excitement. They moved here for breathing room, structure, reliability. Minnesota definitely rewards those things. So, there's some of you out there who I would love to hear from. Folks that have moved to Minnesota either recently or even 20 years ago. What would you say who Minnesota works for? I'm curious to know what the perception is, what kind of perception this state works for, and also who it wouldn't. And same for my in-state friends. I mean, there's obviously, you guys have great nuggets lots of times that just escaped me. So what do you think should be on this list? Who does Minnesota work for and who it does not? My hope is, when you start to see all of this together, the structure, the pace of life, social reality, how suburbs actually function and dictate lifestyle, hopefully Minnesota starts to become a bit more clear. Minnesota is a place that hands down works best for people willing to adapt to it, to plan, participate, and to live with intention, who want that sense of community, who will make an effort to go get it. For those people, Minnesota can feel stable, grounded, and extremely rewarding. For people who want, super spontaneous, friction-free, and instantly social, this place can feel heavier than expected. It can take longer to become the place that you thought it was, even if everything looks good on paper. And again, none of this stuff is wrong. This is not a hype video. It's about understanding what Minnesota offers, who fits in, and how it lines up with you. So again, my name is Chris. If you liked this video, please give us a like. It really helps us. Questions, comments, sarcasm, hit me up down below. Subscribe, and I will see you on the next one real soon.